Kojo, 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 Kojo.
Namaste. Hope everyone is doing good. So I have a lot of pressure. They put me in the first session of the day. I hope I do a decent job. So we're talking about scriptures today. So I thought we can set up like this and we can start with a theme where all four of them can maybe give a startup for 5 minutes. So Dushyant, I want to start with you. And this question is for all the panelists. So while growing up, what were the specific scriptures that maybe shaped you? And as you are growing up, have you revisited those scriptures? And do you find the interpretation to be different as and when you reread them? Maybe we can start over there because we are talking about scriptures today. So Dushyant, maybe you can go first.
Namaskaram to my panelists and namaskaram to the August gathering. At the age of 5, the first verse that probably I was taught was Kujantam Ramarameti Madhuram Madhuraksharam Aruhya Kavita Shakham Vande Valmiki Kokilam. So, memorizing the verses of Srimad Narayaniyam, Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Ramayanam, and excerpts of Mahabharatam has been integral to my childhood. Of course, I did develop a distaste towards just memorizing it at that point in time. Later, while I was tutored in the Shastras, the meaning of the Shastra, that kind of brought the enthusiasm in me to revisit the scriptures. So when I talk about revisiting in the today's context, understanding Ramayana and Mahabharata from abridged versions, from Wikipedia articles, from those 3-minute short talks in 10 respondent 9 o'clock prime TV news channels has become a rage. But for me, Ramayanam or Mahabharatam has been a journey where I read it with the interpretations, with the commentaries. Like for example, Madhava Yogin's work or Amrita Kataka, Tilaka, we have a plethora of commentaries that deal with the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So it's very, very important before we come on news channels or come on talk shows that we respect the commentaries and understand what is told in by the lines and between the lines. So that's been a part of my journey. Coming to revisiting our scriptures, that happens every day. Because as we do sadhana and read those words, there is a revelation at every point in time because it feels that, oh, I didn't know this before. So that comes through intense reading of the Shastras. I can give a variety of examples, but I'll just keep my speech short here because I need to listen to my other panelists speak about their childhood experiences with the Itihasas and Puranas as well. But one thing that I feel is the need of the hour is coming to a consensus with a lot of the incidents. Just an example. Samudra Manthana, the churning of the ocean, comes in the Balakandam, the first canto of Srimad Ramayanam. It comes in the Adi Parva of Sri Mahabharatam. It comes in the 8th skanda of Srimad Bhagavatam. It comes in the first Amsha of Vishnu Puranam. So the same incident told by Valmiki, Vyasa, Shuka and Parashara. So it is very, very important as students of Shastras that we learn the art of coming to a samanjasam, which is called as consensus. And there is various formula to that. Itihasa Purana Bhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmayet Bibheti Alpashrutat Vedat Mamayam Pracharishyati. So we deploy the UV rule of integral calculus. So we have something called ILATE. Integral, logarithmic, algebraic, trigonometric, exponential. So we have to deploy that particular rule to understand those Puranas. So my perspective in the current day context is to understand the Puranas and Itihasas in a very structured format rather than seeing 2-3 lines in news channels. This is where I'll stop. I would love to listen to the other people.
Fair enough. Ami, maybe you can now start.
Namaste, everybody. Namaste to all of you. Jai Shri Krishna. Very happy to be here again. I think my introduction to scriptures was not through books. And in that, I'm sure a lot of you would relate to that journey. I come from a Gujarati family, and Bhagavad has been, Srimad Bhagavatam, has been a large part of our growing up years, but not really the reading of it. There is a 7-day Bhagavad Saptaha. So Katha Vachan, that happens. And I remember my earliest memory goes back to that when we young cousins were there, and Saat Din Pe, there will be one day where there is Krishna Janma. So everybody will be dancing. Some of the kids will be dressed as Krishna. Then there will be Rukmini Vivaha and many such incidents. So, but it was a lot of music, a lot of dance, a lot of good food, and that is what was my first introduction. Now it so happened that I was in that age, 4, 5, 6 years, when even Mahabharata and Ramayana were streamed on TV. So I would say my introduction to the Itihasa happened pretty much through television, which is I think the case for most of the people I know around me. Yeah, a lot of us got introduced to that. And one thing I write on Itihas, and I always say, अच्छा Mahabharat में B.R. Chopra Mahabharat में ऐसे था, but the actual text talks about something else. But today, from the stage, I want to convey my heartfelt gratitude to both B.R. Chopra ji and Ramanand Sagar ji, because but for them, a chunk of us would have never explored what the Shastras were, right? Given that there is this saying, ऐसे मानते हैं, there is this thing, belief that महाभारत को घर पे नहीं रखना चाहिए, महाभारत को घर पे रखेंगे तो महाभारत हो जाएगा. Yeah? So people don't read it. And I don't think any of our parents also wanted to read the Mahabharata to us. Anyway, so because of that, the introduction happened. And I also thought, like everybody else, that I know Mahabharata Ramayana. Then life took over, where the revisiting part then happened. That essentially happened through yoga. Because I used to do gymnastics and yogasana, and that is what I thought was yoga as a kid. I wanted to get deeper. And I opened the Patanjali Yoga Sutra to find more asanas. Yeah? And to my greatest shock, there were no asanas in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. This is like 10, 15 years back. That's when I realized that there's so much out there which I don't know, or which I thought I knew but is completely misplaced. Now through that, I started getting deeper into the Shastras. Then I realized कि नहीं भाई, Sanskrit सीखना पड़ेगा, basic. Then there were lots of these discussions that used to happen around Mahabharata, because we all know that we all have very strong views on Mahabharata, different characters, अरे नहीं कर्ण अच्छा है, अर्जुन अच्छा है, whatever. So much fiction is written about it. And my reading was also fiction. That's when I was completely confused. I was like, okay, till now what I was growing up with, which I thought I knew and which I believed in, now it's all over the place. Was it even right? Do these make sense? They talk of it as Dharma Grantha. What is the Dharma here? And that's when I think the urge, the vismay, the curiosity to actually read the text for what it is happened. And having done that, I realized that there's so much out there. Abhi to bas shuruaat hui hai. So looking forward to this journey, to learning more, actually revisiting to kya, actually learning from scratch as much as I can.
Awesome. Saiswaroopa.
Namaste, everyone. Srimatre Namaha. Yes, very great experiences told by my co-panelists. Introduction to the Purana Itihasa cosmos, right? I believe that India, the children of India don't need an introduction, because I think we would have started our learning while we are in the wombs of our mothers. So, can anybody have that moment of when did you hear the Ramanama for the first time? Right? We don't have a memory. It's been there. It's been running in the legacy, and we are going to pass it on to our children. And it runs, Sanatana. That's the meaning of Sanatana. So I think I was blessed to have had that family, my parents, grandparents, and remaining in the fold of Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, where our introduction happened through his discourses, and then each of us explored our own ways, reading the books of Sri Ramakrishna Matha, Chinmaya Mission, and it was a free style exploration that my parents did, that I did, after a certain basic reading. But I think an important turning point is where I started revisiting, right? We accept certain narratives as a part of, the legacy that is being passed on to us. But the revisiting happened when, in my 12th standard, I had this conversation with a Muslim friend of mine. We have, at grassroots levels, we have very open conversations. We don't take offenses at, facts thrown at each other. So she asked me very innocently, not with any malice, she asked me, why do you guys love Krishna so much? I mean, he has so many wives and all. So, what makes you love Krishna? I mean, I can understand if you are scared that he's God and he's you're worshipping him. That I can understand. But you guys do it with a lot of love. So what's wrong with you guys? I naturally told her the story of Narakasura Vadha, saying, why does Krishna have so many wives? There was an asura called Narakasura who kidnapped so many women, 16,100, 16,000, different texts have different numbers. He kidnapped so many women, and after Krishna killed Narakasura, those women had nowhere to go. So, and he wanted to facilitate a life of dignity to all of them, and he married them, and that's one reason why we love him more. Right? And that was a conversation that stayed with me, because I think the imaginative, I'm a single child, so I didn't have brothers and sisters to fight with or talk to and share my day's experiences. So the Pandavas or Rama, the Lakshmana and Hanuman more than Rama were my brothers virtually. Every day I would have imaginary conversations as a child, and kind of, simulate how would they reply back. So the imaginative person in me started reimagining what would this episode of Narakasura Vadha mean to one of those women rescued by Krishna. And that's how my writing journey started. I think I'll hear more responses, and we can resume that later.
Raghav?
Am I audible? I hope so. So for me, the introduction to the epics happened because my parents come from the Hindi belt, and we have this tradition where during this spring Navratra, which happens around April, we used to have this 9-day recitation of the Ramacharita And that's when I mean, because it's a very beautifully written poem, and the verses are written in such a way that you can actually sing them. And when I got a bit older, I read this novel called Amritlal Nagar, novel called Manas Ka Hans, which is in Hindi, written by somebody called Amritlal Nagar. So then I realized what a multifaceted personality Tulsidas was, and he was actually the Ramanand Sagar of his day. In as much as in the 16th century he popularized the Ram Katha, and he used to direct the Ram Katha, Ram Leela, that used to take place in Varanasi. And the other thing that he came up with was that he shot different prasangas from the epic at different locations in the city. And at that point, it was a big morale boost, because, of course, the country was, not the whole country, maybe that belt was under the grip of alien invaders. So for the people, it was a big source of confidence to know that ultimately the message of good triumphing over evil was something that echoed. But then when I got older, I started reading the so-called Marxist history. Then what struck me was, and it's something that I still feel very strongly about, is what a bastardized version of the epics was taught to us. And if you actually read the epics, then you realize that a lot of what was taught to us was incorrect. Like, I'll give you a very small example. Like there is this chaupai from the Ramcharitmanas which is really popular these days. It goes something like Dhol Gawar Shudra Pashunari Sakal Tadana Ke Adhikari. And the translation is that if you are a drum, if you are illiterate, if you are an animal, or if you're a woman, then you deserve to be spanked or beaten. But if you actually go through the Ramcharitmanas, and the person who speaks it is, of course, not Ram, and it's not Tulsidas, it's not the narrator. I mean, there are multiple layers at which the narration is happening in the Ramcharitmanas. The entity that actually speaks these words is this personification or embodiment of the ocean. It's a Neptune or Poseidon type figure. And Tulsidas actually says in the previous chaupai, Binay na manat jal in the Doha, Binay na manat jaladi jad gaye teen din beat, Bole Ram Sakop tab bhai bin hoye na preet, which can be translated to that if you plead before this stupid sea or stupid ocean, then it makes no sense because it will do your bidding only when you show some anger. So the context is that Ram is trying to worship the ocean and trying to make sure that the ocean gives way to his army to cross over to the Lanka, and it's not happening. So when it's not happening, then he just says that I am going to shoot my arrows and I will dry up the ocean. And unfortunately, what's happening is that in this highly politicized atmosphere, this Marxist missionary nexus is forcing us to, is forcing this rather tendentious reading of the epics upon us. I mean, ultimately, let us be very honest, you will not find your values of liberty and equality reflected in the epics. But there are so many places, like there is a verse in the Uttarkand where Ram says that, where in the Uttarkand, in the Ramcharitmanas, where Ram very clearly says that it doesn't matter what caste, creed, gender you are from. And as a matter of fact, he even mentions the third gender and says that my devotion is equal to all and salvation is something that is available for everybody as long as you are worshipping me with the utmost devotion. So what I find really unfortunate is that because a lot of us don't really read the epics and they just read the bastardized version of the epics that you find in the history books, you actually don't know what is in there. And unless you go to the original, or if you read, or even if you don't know how to read the original, because the Ramcharitmanas is written in a dialect that nobody really speaks these days, even in Awadh, right? Even the Awadh region, that dialect nobody really speaks these days. But unless you go to the epics and read them, you will not be able to understand what's there, and then you will be imbued with an inferiority complex wherein you will feel that your religion or the religion of your ancestors was totally casteist and misogynist and based on the oppression of women and lower caste. But that's actually not the case if you go through these epics and revisit them. So I think it's really important for all of us to read at least the Ramcharitmanas, the Ramayana, the Valmiki Ramayana and the Mahabharata in the original to try and understand who these characters were, why they behaved the way they did. Because if you don't, then then it's really unfortunate, and it will create huge problems for us as a country and society in the future.
यार वो तुलसीदास जी की पंक्ति आपने जो बताई तो उसमें सुरेंद्र शर्मा ने एक बहुत अच्छा, सुरेंद्र शर्मा इज़ अ हास्य कवि, तो उसमें उनका एक पंक्ति थी, उन्होंने कहा कि मैंने मेरी पत्नी जी को कहा कि ढोल गवार शूद्र पशु नारी ये सब ताड़न के अधिकारी, इसका अर्थ समझती हो या समझाएं। तो उनकी धर्मपत्नी ने उनको उत्तर दिया कि इसका अर्थ तो बिल्कुल साफ है, इसमें एक जगह मैं हूँ, चार जगह आप हैं।
No, but I'll just add one more thing. Like there was an analogy I was thinking of. I don't know, is there anybody who has read The Great Gatsby by Fitzgerald here? I think all of us have.
दुष्यंत इज लाइक मुझे माफ़ करिए।
So if you read it, then there is a character called Tom Buchanan. And Tom Buchanan is talking about a very shady pseudoscience called eugenics, which was really popular then. And he says that, look, now what is happening is, and this was in the context of the rise of the Japanese empire, and of course, African American culture was getting closer and closer to the mainstream in America. The story is set in the 1920s, in the so-called roaring 20s. And this character talks about how it is very bad that the white race is about to be overshadowed by the yellow race and the black race. But these are views that were held by the character, and as a matter of fact, Buchanan is not a sympathetic character. So just like you cannot cancel Fitzgerald on the basis of what Tom Buchanan says, I don't think there is a case for cancelling Tulsidas on the basis of what a rather unsympathetic character in the epic says.
All right, I want to come back to you, Dushyant. So you did mention that do not understand scriptures on the basis of 3-minute videos or 3 lines or a Wikipedia article. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. How many in the crowd over here, if we could maybe do a straw poll, how many of you read any basic scripture? Put your hands up in entirety. There's the answer, Dushyant. All right, so, well, I mean, you could say 10 to 15%, but that's the reality over here. Now, an average human being, let's say if I'm growing up, I have to study those thick books. At least when all of us used to go to school, the books were really thick. So for the kids these days, you all are lucky, okay? So, पहले हम पढ़ाई करते हैं, फिर हम बोलते हैं कि अरे अभी कमाई करेंगे, फिर उस सब के बाद if we are expected, like the Mahabharata is quite a lot of pages. And today, you know, first it was okay, there was a 45-minute time segment, then it became 15-minute YouTube videos. Now we have 60-second Instagram shorts. And in that process where you have reducing attention spans, Dushyant, don't you think we have to simplify scripture?
Simplification, in my humble opinion.
I mean the essence.
We can. So I'll give you an example for that. You wanted that simplification, right?
Yes.
So, in Srimad Ramayanam, when serial directors or movie directors have to depict Sita during the Vanavasam, which is the exile period, we see her sporting Valkalam, which is forest hermit dress. So while Rama was asked to relinquish his jewelry, his comforts, and then go on an exile to the forest, Sita is also given similar clothes. So she also has to relinquish her jewelry. This is what Anjali Devi in the Telugu cinema, Padmini in the Tamil cinema, and I'm sure there'll be characters in the Hindi industry have depicted. But the truth is, while Sita wanted to be as simple as what Rama was, she was commanded by her father-in-law Dasharatha, telling that you should not relinquish your comforts. Savastran abharanani cha. So he commands his son Lakshmana that for the 14 years of the exile in the forest, Sita should be sporting the same silk clothes and jewelry what she used to be sporting in Ayodhya. So Lakshmana had to carry that extra big container of saris of different types and jewelry for Sita. So she had to sport silk jewelry, silk clothes and jewelry. Now the question is, what relevance will it make to a current day audience who are seated in this tent in Delhi? If I have to say that Sita was to sport all this jewelry, she had to be the way she was in Ayodhya. So she had Lakshmana attending to all her daily work. So what message does this have to convey? So let's imagine either the wife or the husband, they've been posted to some deep forests of Kodaikanal or Nagpur. The wife or the husband to that person doesn't have to give up their Netflix subscription. So the person is in the forest, so the other person doesn't have to pay the brunt of it. So Rama has been asked to go to the forest. Sita shouldn't have to give up her comfort. So this is the relevance that we can have. But this itself, Tushar, took about 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So the 60 seconds is actually not that possible. And one more thing is, at every point in time, we don't have to come down to the level of the audience. We may have to elevate the audience also to the level of the listener. That's very important. If the audience says tomorrow, tell me for 15 seconds, I don't have to give it up. if you are interested in the scriptures, of course, we are not a religion. As a civilization, technically, in the past, we have never believed in luring people through money or through fear. That's technically been the point. So, in this civilization, if you want to acquire knowledge, you will have to spare some time. It need not have to be the 3 hours or the 15 years of Gurukula Vasam of those days. If you can't give up even 15 minutes in your life to learning and you're restricted to 60 seconds, I'm sure Achida Visishtan Pralaye Jantun Avalokya Jata Nirveda Karanakale Yogam says Shastram. Certain people are ordained to stay in this mundane world. Let them.
But then, okay, Sai, Sarupa, even if they live in the mundane world, should they not know a little bit? Isn't a little bit better than a lot in many ways?
Absolutely. But there is one principle behind itihasa. You know, maybe it will apply to the Purana part also if we think. But there is the shloka called, which goes like, Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesha Samanvitaha Purvavritta Kathayuktam Itihasam Prayakshati. Now, Mahabharata, because everybody likes the Mahabharata, how many dynasties were there during that time? Or before the Pandavas and Kauravas, after the Pandavas and Kauravas? If you read the Vishnu Purana or Bhagavatam, you'll get a countless number of kings and, all kinds of kingdoms, dynasties. But why are these particular stories taken? Because there is a upadesha, there is an instruction about how to pursue dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So the way to look at itihasa itself is, if I can again reduce it, for our own selfish purposes, for our own pursuit of our dharma, our artha, our kama, our moksha. The mistake we do when we do these 15 seconds or 60 seconds or 3 minutes, even 15 minutes, I mean, a lifetime is not enough to, do the adhyayan of Mahabharata. But still, the mistake we do is we go about judging rather than learning. So judgment is like a, free consulting. I mean, nobody's paying you for that opinion. Why do you want to spend that effort and time forming an opinion, right? You have to learn and apply it so that your dharma, artha, kama, moksha get achieved, right? I think that is the guiding principle that we need to keep in mind. And yes, as you said, once that is, strong, even in 60 seconds, we can get something useful.
Right. So there was a famous song, I mean, पता नहीं, मुझे तो पता है, बाकियों को पता है कि नहीं, ब्लैक एंड वाइट पिक्चर थी, आई थिंक 50s या 60s में, उसमें लाइन थी, सिकंदर ने पोरस जो से की थी लड़ाई, जो की थी लड़ाई तो मैं क्या करूं, जो कौरव ने पांडव से की हाथापाई, जो की हाथापाई तो मैं क्या करूं. सो मैं क्या करूं, राघव, तो जो आज की पीढ़ी है, टुडेज जनरेशन, ये 1960s का गाना है, तो वो आज ये कहती है तो मैं क्या करूं, तो क्या करें वो.
देखिए, मेरा इसमें ये कहना है कि कोई भी जो सभ्यता होती है, उस सभ्यता को अपने नायकों की आवश्यकता होती है. और यदि हमारे जो नायक हैं हम उनके बारे में स्वयं नहीं पढ़ेंगे, तो और जो लोग हैं, जो दूसरी सभ्यताओं के लोग हैं, जैसे पश्चिमी सभ्यताओं के लोग हैं, वो हमें बताएंगे. जैसे साई स्वरूपा जी ने अभी एक उदाहरण दिया था कि एक उनकी मुस्लिम दोस्त थी जिसने जो है उसके बारे में जो है काफ़ी भगवान कृष्ण के पात्र के बारे में काफ़ी बुरी बात उनको बताई. तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जब तक हम इनको खुद नहीं पढ़ेंगे तब तक हमें अपनी सभ्यता के विषय में जो है ज्ञान नहीं होगा. और हमें अपनी सभ्यता के विषय में अगर ज्ञान नहीं होगा तो हम अमर बेल की तरह होंगे, हमारी कोई जड़ें नहीं होंगी. और जिनकी जड़ें नहीं होती उनको बहुत आसानी से जो है उन वृक्षों को गिराया जा सकता है. कि जैसे एक रामचरितमानस में भी आता है, सजल मूल जिन वृक्ष नहीं, की अगर आपकी जो जड़ें हैं उनको पानी और खाद नहीं दी गई है तो आप बहुत आसानी से जो है गिराए जा सकते हो. और ये बात जो है मुझे लगता है आजकल जो मनोवैज्ञानिक है वो भी यही बोलते हैं कि आपके जो है कहीं ना कहीं आपकी कुछ वैल्यूज़ होनी चाहिए, आपकी कोई रूटेडनेस होनी चाहिए. तो इसलिए जो है इनको पढ़ना मेरे अनुसार आवश्यक है। और ये तो मैं नहीं कहता कि हर किसी के पास 1-1, 2-2 घंटे का समय होता है, पर हमें बहुत सारी चीज़ों के लिए समय मिल जाता है। अंत में जब हम समय निकालना चाहते हैं तो हमें मिल भी जाता है। जैसे मेरे 2 बच्चे हैं, एक मेरा जॉब है एज ए लॉयर, और अदरवाइज़ भी मैं ऐसे पैनल्स पे आता रहता हूँ, फिर भी मुझे जो है मे बी 1 घंटा रोज़ जिम करने का समय मिल जाता है। तो इसलिए जो है युवा पीढ़ी को भी मैं केवल उद्बोधन ही कर सकता हूँ, ज़बरदस्ती तो कोई कर नहीं सकता कि दिन में आधा घंटा या 40 मिनट निकाल के इन किताबों को भी पढ़े। क्योंकि हमको कहीं ना कहीं ये बताया जाता है कि जो पाश्चात्य सभ्यता है वो हमसे बेहतर है। और लेकिन अगर आप एक्चुअली इलियड और ओडिसी को पढ़ें तो इलियड और ओडिसी का जो कंबाइंड लेंथ है, मुझे लगता है महाभारत से 10वां हिस्सा भी नहीं है शायद, कंबाइंड जो लेंथ है। और महाभारत में वो सब तो छोड़िए, आपको इतनी सारी मतलब जो कथानक है महाभारत का वो 1 लाख श्लोक हैं, और 1 लाख श्लोक में जो 80% जो है वो बाकी जो कथाएं, मतलब जो उसके पूरी टैपेस्ट्री में वीव करके जो है कथाएं बताई गई हैं, तो उनको पढ़ के जो है बहुत बार हमको अपने जो इतिहास है आज का, उसके विषय में भी आपको इंसाइट्स मिलती रहती हैं। तो मुझे लगता है इस वजह से जो है महाभारत, रामायण, रामचरितमानस तीनों का अध्ययन आवश्यक है और करना चाहिए।
अच्छा अमी, आजकल सबको T20 क्रिकेट अच्छा लगता है ना, राघव।
टेस्ट देखता हूँ मैं, टेस्ट
नहीं,
मैच।
हाँ तो फिर बोलो मत ना कि टाइम मिलता है तो पूरा दिन टेस्ट मैच देखते हो तुम। तो आजकल मतलब मेरे और राघव जैसे ओल्ड डायनासोर्स हैं इधर जो टेस्ट मैच देखते हैं अभी भी। मैं T20 नहीं देखता, ठीक है, तो मैं तो स्क्रिप्चर पढ़ लूँगा चलो, मगर यू आर एन ऑथर ऑफ 2 books वेयर बेसिकली यू हैव समराइज्ड इट, तो फिर क्यों किया?
तो मेरा इस पे जो मत है वो ये है कि टेक्नोलॉजी इज़ हियर टू स्टे, 60 seconds आर हियर टू स्टे, 15 seconds विल ऑल्सो हैपन. It is how do we use this to start anchoring the youngsters to create, as you said, ना मेरा क्या, what is in it for me. जब तक यही नहीं पता होगा कि भाई मेरे को क्या है, या अरे to create that shock factor, to create the विस्मय factor, I think उसमें कहीं ना कहीं even the 60 seconds videos help. And I'll give one example, something that happened with me. तो एक पॉडकास्ट था जिसपे it was a long 1.5 घंटे का पॉडकास्ट जिसपे मैंने एक बात कही थी कि वो ट्रिविया था कि हनुमान जी के पास रामायण में गदा का उल्लेख नहीं है, श्रीमद् वाल्मीकि रामायण में गदा का उल्लेख नहीं है. और वो जो पॉडकास्टर है उसने उसका 40 seconds क्लिप कर दिया.
स्मार्ट का है.
हाँ, सो नाउ दिस थिंग वेंट वायरल, ठीक है, इट वेंट वायरल एंड आई गॉट अ लॉट ऑफ गालीज की क्या बोल रही है, हनुमान जी बिना गदा के, ये तो हम इमेजिन ही नहीं कर सकते, इसको आता नहीं है कुछ, ठीक है. नाउ ऑफ कोर्स देयर वर सम पीपल हु स्टॉप्ड एट दैट कि इसको कुछ नहीं आता है, ठीक है, बट देयर वर अदर्स एंड देयर वर मेनी अदर्स हु वर लाइक ये क्या बोल रही है यार, इसको कुछ आता है नहीं आता है, लेट अस चेक, ठीक है. लॉट ऑफ देम एक्चुअली वेंट एंड चेक्ड. Many others are like, ये कहाँ से बोल रही है, इसका पूरा लिंक कहाँ है पॉडकास्ट का. It is a 1.5 hour podcast. Now that has like 500,000 views, right? हम कहते हैं कि आज की जनरेशन जो है वो लॉन्ग फॉर्म नहीं देखती, हम कहते हैं कि आज की जनरेशन जो है उसमें पेशेंस नहीं है. Of course there will always be people who are going to be more mundane, ठीक है, who will prefer Bollywood over everything else. That's fine, right? पर ऐसे भी है जिनको थोड़ा भी अगर हम विस्मय क्रिएट कर पाएँ तो दे विल बी अट्रैक्टेड टू व्हाट वी हैव, बट वी हैव टू क्रिएट दैट विस्मय, वी हैव टू क्रिएट दैट एंकर फॉर देम, which the 30 seconds video do for sure, yeah. So I think how do we use it will determine how effective we are or how effective we are not. The other thing I'll say, I was in I used to work for a German company और हम लोग को ना जर्मनी भेजा गया एक लीडरशिप ट्रेनिंग के लिए, ठीक है. तो वी हैड अ 3-day लीडरशिप ट्रेनिंग, अमेजिंग, रियली नाइस, दिस दैट. अच्छा, एट द एंड ऑफ द ट्रेनिंग आई वेंट अप टू द कोच and I was like, you know, a lot of what you're teaching resonates with me because उस समय मैंने, this is like 6-7 years back, I'm like, हमारा जो भगवत गीता के concepts है वो बहुत मैच करते हैं आप जो कह रहे हो उससे, this is so similar, ठीक है. And I was stupid enough, मुझे लगा same हर जगह आता होगा. He smiled and he's like, I've spent 5 years in India studying yoga, shastras, Vedanta and all of that, ठीक है. Now you think of it, we actually give our money to all these big leadership institutes who come up with these frameworks for us. lot of them actually learn from us. But we don't know what is in it for us in those scriptures. And hence, we are ready to pay all that money only for those frameworks, right? Now, when we know we have that, we have to convey it to the people. How will we convey it? Using the methods we have today. By making the best use of the methods we have today, be it summarizing the text, be it making videos, be it making some great cartoon shows, right? Another example, the other day, my brother lives in the US, he's married to a Russian-American woman, and I have one niece and one nephew. Us din we were doing a video call, and my niece and nephew were jumping, Jai Hanuman kar rahe hain. ठीक है? Why? Because they are watching this series on Hotstar, Hanuman, the legend of Hanuman. It is so beautifully made, yeah? Lot of times we see that the quality of what was made on our side was never great. ऐसा नहीं था कि था नहीं. But the current techniques, the current animation, all that, it is actually appealing to people. We just need to do more of this. Once they are interested, once they know that there is something in it, many of them will pick up that path and continue to walk on that path. So I am not afraid. I mean, I'm not scared at all with what we have. I think it is an opportunity for us, which we must have.
I completely agree. सब लोग please podcast सुना करो. Podcast बहुत अच्छी चीज़ होती है. Yes, Raghav.
इसमें एक दो चीज़ ऐड करना चाहूँगा जो एमी जी ने कही. उन्होंने जर्मनी की बात करी. तो जर्मनी में जो है आज भी जो वैगनर के ओपेरा है और जो वैगनर के ओपेरा है उसमें वो लोग ज़ीगफ्रीड और ब्रूनहिल्डा की कहानी सुनाते हैं. तो उनका जो ये जो जर्मेनिक माइथोलॉजी है वो भी उसी की कहानियों का मंचन करते हैं और वो 4-4, 5-5 घंटे चलता है और वो कहानियाँ बहुत ही बोर हैं. मतलब वो एक्चुअली उनका रामायण और महाभारत से जो है कोई कंपैरिजन नहीं है. और मुझे कभी कभी बहुत दुख और क्षोभ होता है कि जैसे आप गेम ऑफ थ्रोन्स का उदाहरण ले लें तो वो जो कहानी है उसका एक्चुअली वेफर थिन प्लॉट है. कैरेक्टर्स में भी कभी कभी आपको लगेगा डेप्थ और नुआंस नहीं है, लेकिन आप उसमें पढ़ें कि जो बैटल ऑफ द बास्टर्ड्स है उसके मंचन में उन्होंने कितने दिन लगाए थे, कितनी मेहनत करी थी. और हमारे जो रामायण और महाभारत दूरदर्शन ने आज से 35 साल पहले बनाए थे तो उसको देख के मतलब ऐसा लगता है कि लोग आपस में लाठीबाजी कर रहे हैं. और अगर आप एक्चुअली महाभारत को पढ़े तो महाभारत में जो है कैसे तलवार से युद्ध करना चाहिए उसके बारे में एक पूरा जिसे कहते हैं ना अध्याय है, जो एक मैनुअल सा है कि कैसे करना चाहिए. लेकिन हम उसको रिविजिट नहीं करते, हम उसको इंटरेस्टिंग तरीके से मार्केट नहीं करते. जैसे इन्होंने कहा कि हॉटस्टार में इनके नीस और नेफ्यू देखते हैं तो एनिमेशन छोड़िए, मुझे लगता है हम अगर लाइव एक्शन मूवी बनाएं, अगर RRR जैसी मूवी जो कि एक्चुअली एकदम ही काल्पनिक इवेंट पे बेस्ड है कि सीताराम राजू और कुमारम भीम कभी आपस में नहीं मिले थे, मतलब इस इतिहास में इसका कोई उल्लेख नहीं आता, वो मूवी जो है अगर पूरी दुनिया में मार्केट करी जा सकती है. या आप कभी कोई जाके देखे यूट्यूब पे है पीटर ब्रूक की महाभारत. तो जो पीटर ब्रूक की महाभारत है वो 5 घंटे का प्रोडक्शन है. उसको लोगों ने देखा, नॉट जस्ट भारत में, उसको पूरी दुनिया में लोगों ने देखा और उसका इंटरनेशनल कास्ट था. केवल आई थिंक मल्लिका साराभाई जो थी उन्होंने द्रौपदी का रोल किया था. तो मुझे ये लगता है कहीं ना कहीं गलती हम में भी है कि हम जो है हमारे पास आज जितने रिसोर्सेज अवेलेबल हैं उस हिसाब से जो है इन एपिक्स को उस स्केल पे ना हम इमेजिन करते हैं ना उनको प्रोड्यूस करते हैं. अगर हम करेंगे तो मुझे लगता है इंडिया से बाहर भी जो है लोग इसको सीरियसली लेने लगेंगे. और मुझे ऐसा लगता है कहीं ना कहीं ये हमारी सॉफ्ट पावर बन सकता है. जैसे आप मुलान की कहानी देखें तो मुलान की कहानी जो है उस पर पहले डिज्नी ने एक एनिमेटेड मूवी बनाई और उसके बाद एक लाइव एक्शन मूवी बनाई. और मुलान अगर आप पढ़ें तो पूरी मुलान की जो लेजेंड पढ़ के आपको लगता है कि पूरे जो चाइनीज़ सिविलाइजेशन के लोग थे वो कैसे जो है नॉर्दर्न नोमैड से जो है थर थर काँपते थे. तो जबकि हमारे महाभारत और रामायण तो विजय की कहानी है कि कैसे जो है हमारे लोग गए और उन्होंने श्रीलंका में जाके जो है विजय प्राप्त करी. और आज भी जब मैं थोड़े दिन पहले श्रीलंका गया था तो मुझे ये जान के बहुत हैरानी हुई थी कि जो लक्ष्मण जी हैं उनकी श्रीलंका में अलग से पूजा होती है. तो उनको लाख समन देवियों बोला जाता है. और वहाँ पे एक लेजेंड है कि रामचंद्र जी का तो ऑफकोर्स उनका तो एक प्रण था कि वो शहर के अंदर नहीं घुसेंगे. तो लक्ष्मण एक तरीके से वहाँ पे मिलिट्री गवर्नर जैसा काम करने लगे थे. तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने जो है एग्रीकल्चर वगैरह उसको काफ़ी इम्प्रूव किया था. तो आज भी वहाँ के लोग जो उनको रिवेयर करते हैं और बुद्ध भगवान के साथ मंदिरों में उनकी भी प्रतिमा की स्थापना करी जाती है। तो ये सब चीज़ें जो है हमको खुद बतानी पड़ेंगी, खुद समझना पड़ेगा। एक बड़ा ही डिफीटिस्ट और विक्टिम हमारे अंदर कॉम्प्लेक्स आ गया है, तो उस विक्टिमहुड कॉम्प्लेक्स को और उस डिफीटिस्ट कॉम्प्लेक्स को हमें छोड़ना चाहिए।
So, before we go into the audience questions, I just wanted to touch upon, and I'll request maybe Dushyant, Saiswaroopa, and Ami to take this up immediately. I'll give you an analogy of my experience. So, I was in America last year. I visited a temple. I don't want to take the name of the temple for reasons obvious, but the pujari knew my darshan or my point of view, and they still invited me. मैंने पूजा की, हाँ 4 वक्त पूजा भी करते हैं. So अंदर गए उधर, the pujari called me the head and he spoke privately to me. He's like, we are facing a struggle. I was like, Pujari ji, he's like, 2nd and 3rd generation kids over here, they are not getting attracted to the ideas. And I was like, why Pujari ji? And he was like, we are not able to, I'll use the word Raghav used here, we are not able to repackage it in, look, language evolves, right? Even if we look at Sanskrit, the Vedic Sanskrit in the old books of the Rig Veda, then the language changes in the new Rig Veda, then the language changes right up to the Bhagavad Gita, and today. So if that language itself has evolved, why can't our messaging evolve? Maybe, Dushyant, again, I'll be back to you and then we'll go into the Q&A.
I'll take up this question in parts. First of all, our understanding that the language in our itihasas and Puranas, which is Sanskritam, and the language deployed in the Vedas is the same, itself is a bit flawed. I'll tell you how. I'm sure there'll be experts who will even be consultants to some of the best Hindi authors here. I generally speak Hindi to a public, to an audience who doesn't speak Hindi. So that's my proficiency in Hindi. Yet I will try giving you an example. Kal main aaya tha. So based on the verb, you decide the meaning of kal, which is yesterday. Kal main aunga. Again, it becomes tomorrow based on that aunga. So that kal gets a meaning based on the verb and the participle it takes. This is how most languages are. Any language that we know is based on the context. For example, Dvijaha, that which is born twice. When Krishna is born, to see the whiteness of the teeth, the poet says, Dvijachandra Chandrikam Aikshata. The 2 rows of teeth were seen. Why is the tooth referred to as Dvijaha? Because it comes as a milk teeth and then as a permanent teeth. So it is born twice. So Dvijaha. In certain occasions, we also refer to birds as Dvijaha because they are oviparous. They come as the egg, and from the egg, the chick. So it's a 2-stage process. This is how most languages are. Whereas when you come to Vedam, Ajaha, Durmanaha, if it goes Ajaha below, then it denotes goat. Ajaha, Yevam Va, if it goes up, it is Brahma. So the way you interpret Vedas is not on the context, but on the sound. So technically, it is always better to say that Sanskritam as a language is inspired from the language of the Vedas and not the Vedic Sanskrit. 1. Second thing you had asked with respect to?
Repackaging.
Repackaging. I am not one of those celebrated authors who's seated on the stage. I'm just a wannabe author. I'm more of a speaker. So I do travel. I give about 300 discourses a year within India and outside India in my mother tongue, which is Tamil, and as well as in English. So I do find that there is a surge across generations to understand the scriptures better. But trust me, Tushar, this particular statement that the generations feel that it should be repackaged is a line that has been repeated across centuries.
Absolutely.
Because while I used to be in my class 9, my mother used to tell, you are not studying the way you were studying in class 8. And she used to repeat the same dialogue while I was in class 10. So it either proves that I'm exponentially deteriorating or she's lying. Whichever is the truth. The point is, at no point in time, everybody will read the Itihasas and will become the next Valmikis. And repackaging, yes, that is where I would like to conclude with this small point. In MBA, of course, I'm surrounded by, again, a lot of such people, such scholars here. We do come across this course called as communication skills. And we may end up paying an average of about 12 to 22 lakhs to do our MBA. Of course, after paying loads for the coaching. You attend a typical discourse of any person, at least if you have time, you can attend my discourse. Free discourse, it's open for all. You don't even have to register. On day 6, when I talk about Sugriva Pattabhishekam from Valmiki Ramayana, while Rama and Lakshmana go on a sojourn to search for Sita, they end up coming to a place called Hampi, the current day Hampi, which is Bellary district from Karnataka, the state from which I hail from. So, Rama and Lakshmana, they are very dejected. They've lost Sita. There were only 3 of them and one member is missing. So they are dejected. And there is the other person who's the excommunicated brother who has been made a pariah by his own brother called Sugriva. So Sugriva asks Hanuman to go and check who these gym-bodied men are. So Hanuman has to come and check who these men are. Hanuman comes and just speaks 4 sentences. And after those 4 sentences, Rama turns towards Lakshmana and says, and gives about 10 verses. This is called Bhashana Kaushalam, the right way of speaking. Avistaram asandigdham adhritam avilambitam urastam kanthakam vakyam vartate madhyame sware samskara kramasampannam udhritam avilambitam ucharayati kalyanim vacham hridayaharinim. While you speak in the public, you should ensure that every person listens to you, you're audible, you shouldn't shout at a high pitch, you shouldn't talk at a baritone, you should not give gap between words, avistaram, you should not talk in such a way that the speed is so high that people are not able to understand what you're speaking, because that is an art to not allow people to ask questions. If you speak so fast, people won't understand and ask questions. Isn't that a smart way? So, you should be talking words which are acceptable to the general audience. Whichever situation you are put to, even in the TV debates, you should never use words which are uncharitable. That is the control that you should have. Sadhana gives you that control. You should learn how to control your tongue. No word, see, TV debates should not become 13 plus or 18 plus. Right, all children, there are children seated, you should know how to frame your sentences, not repeat. So these are all important things. Now you tell me, I am just expressing what is told in Ramayanam. And how better can I repackage it? And if people are not even ready to listen to this, so be it. I'll now ask others.
Can I?
Yeah,
Okay,
quick
so-
points because we have to go to
yeah.
Q&A.
So my question, I am not, as in, I belong to maybe one generation older, but the same generation also, which was like, Arey, I can't relate to this. Hai na? Why is this important? Why are these dharma granthas there? That is where my journey itself started, that it's not making sense to me. What is in it for me? Now, why is it that our youngsters don't connect is the first question.
It is.
Why is it that our youngsters don't connect? Because they believe that somehow the value systems which these scriptures talk about is not relevant today. What is relevant today? Equality, everybody same, freedom to decide, my way, highway, whatever. And we believe that our scriptures are actually anti to that. ठीक है? So they feel कि यार इसमें कोई मजा नहीं है. आज के लिए ये कुछ भी relevant नहीं है. Now, is it true is the first question. If it is not relevant, तो पढ़ने का कोई मतलब ही नहीं है. ठीक है? Why would you waste your time reading if it is not relevant? But the fact is that's not true. A lot of values today also that we talk about are actually, it's not as if कि हमारा शास्त्र कुछ और ही कहते हैं. I'll take one example. We talk about, whenever we talk about Draupadi, we only talk about the Vastraharan episode. Yeah, Vastraharan, फिर she's crying, she's demanding revenge, da da da. There is one episode, ek to that itself, like her character in Mahabharat is very, very evolved. She has a poise, yeah, and she has a wonderful personality. But there is one episode of Draupadi Satyabhama Samvad, where Draupadi is actually telling Satyabhama that how, when she was the queen of Indraprastha, she used to manage not just the entire household, but the activities within the palace, where like 100,000+ people would come to eat every day. Then there were thousands of maids and helpers who would be needed to actually serve all of them. So it was a huge project management exercise, yeah. And she says, I am the one who was managing all of this, yeah. Then she also says that the treasury of Indraprastha was unfathomable. It was huge. Eko aham api vedmi, she says. Only I am the only one who has complete transparency to the treasury of Indraprastha. Yeah? Not even the brothers. Only I know. Only I know what is the I and the Vyai, what is coming in and what is going out. So if you see in today's context, if this was an organization, she's like the COO, CFO of Indraprastha. Is this not relevant today? Is this not what we should learn? Now, when we talk of repackaging, I don't think there is any required. We just need to pull out these stories which make sense as they made sense then, as they make sense now, right? And that is where I think some of our role comes. That what is it that we want to bring out to begin with, to show that the values there are as relevant as they were then, as they are today, for all of us, right? This is just one example, and I can go on and on.
Yep,
to say how relevant this is.
Saiswaroopa, because we have to go to questions.
Okay. So, yes, I totally agree with my co-panelists here that repackaging, right? The necessity of repackaging occurs because some kind of packaging happened in the middle that corrupted the message. Yeah, some kind of wrong packaging, very time-limited, narrow packaging happened in the middle. I don't want to take names or time frames or anything like that.
Oh, please do.
That kind of... so that kind of made it irrelevant. And as Amiji beautifully pointed out, Draupadi's functions as the empress of Indraprastha. And I would like to bring in Savitri's case. So, how do we use the term Sati Savitri? Right? Term Sati Savitri, if I ask, it's kind of popular notion is about some submissive, very goody-goody woman, that kind of this one. But you actually know how Savitri chose Satyavan, right? That is not discussed, right? I mean, Savitri's father, Ashwapati, he tells her when she becomes of marriable age, he tells her, I mean, you are so well versed in your skills, vidyas and all, and whichever boy I see, I find him not worthy of you. Maybe it is my father's bias. And tomorrow I don't want that blame that he kept his daughter unmarried. So, you take your chariot, you take your soldiers, tour the country, meet young men, and choose your husband and come back to me. I'll bless you. So how many fathers have this courage to send their daughters out to choose their, husbands today?
Raghav.
So that is the level of liberalism that, ancient India had that we don't know. So I think the content creators today, authors like us or even teachers, I'm a professor as well. So the way we impart these lessons we have to put an extra effort to pull out those relevant stories to give the younger generation. We have to respect the younger generation.
मेरा short
राघव
point
जल्दी से आनंद के जैसे फटाफट
हाँ
बोलना
जल्दी से मेरा बस ये कहना है कि जैसे इन लोगों ने द्रौपदी की बात करी, अगर आप भीष्म पितामह का पढ़ें तो आई थिंक ये उद्योग पर्व में आता है या भीष्म पर्व के बिगिनिंग में आता है. ही एक्चुअली टॉक्स अबाउट द रूल्स ऑफ वॉर. एंड इफ़ यू रियली रीड द जिनीवा कन्वेंशन, एक थोड़ा सा क्लीशे होता है ये कहना कि जब वो लोग जंगल में थे तो हम लोगों का एडवांस सिविलाइजेशन था, पर इस केस में ये एक्चुअली एक्यूरेट है, क्योंकि अगर आप उन्हें पढ़े तो वो सब जो जिनीवा कन्वेंशन में लिखा गया है कुछ नहीं तो उससे 3000 साल पहले भीष्म पितामह ने ऑलरेडी कहा हुआ था. पर जल्दी से मैं एक पॉइंट और ऐड करना चाहता हूँ. बात रीपैकेजिंग की हो रही है तो मुझे ऐसा कभी कभी लगता है कि क्योंकि ये सारे लिविंग ट्रेडिशन है और लोगों की आस्था इससे जो है जुड़ी हुई है, तो हम उसको रीपैकेज अगर एक सर्टन ऑडियंस की सेंसिबिलिटीज़ के लिए कर दें तो उनको थोड़ी नाराज़गी होगी. तो एक तरीके से मुझे लगता है ये थोड़ा हम लोगों के लिए एक जिसे कहते हैं एक धर्म संकट जैसा है.
Okay, so now we can go to the Q&A. My request to everyone is कि आप लोग हमेशा 60 सेकंड्स के वीडियो मांगते हो तो 3 मिनट के क्वेश्चन मत पूछना. प्रवचन नहीं चाहिए, प्रश्न चाहिए. तो जिसके पास प्रश्न है प्लीज़ प्रश्न पूछिएगा. एंड जैसे वो YouTube का शॉर्ट या Instagram का वीडियो होता है उसके टाइम से कम में प्रश्न पूछ लीजिएगा.
Hello. Namaskar. My question is to Brahmashri Dushyant ji. We are talking about revisit. A few days back, I saw a Yakshagana performance in NSD. It was Bali Vad or Bali Moksha as they presented it. So there was a dialogue when Rama reveals to Bali that I am Rama. The Yakshagana chief told me that they are based on Valmiki Ramayana. In Valmiki Ramayana, are there occasions when Rama has said that I am like Jatayu Moksha or some other occasion? Has Rama said I am Lord Rama? Thank you.
Sir, your question is, has Rama revealed that he is divinity?
Yes, yes.
So it is called Atimanusha Sheela Vrittaveshaihi Ativrittamara Vikramav Pratapaihi. Every time Rama speaks, he says, Atmanam Manusham Manye Ramam Dasharathatmajam. I am a normal human being. I am the son of a monarch called as Dasharatha. I am D Ram. I may have problems with N Ram, but he says, I am D Ram.
Hey Ram.
So this is one. So to your question, Rama doesn't say anywhere, but there are 2-3 occasions where inadvertently that comes out. When he looks at the dying bird Jatayu, he says, Gachalokan Anuttaman. Go to that abode from which there is no return. Nasapunaravartate says Brahma Sutram. From which there is no return. So moksha pradatvam, the ability to grant moksham is vested only with Paramatma. One. Second, while Hanuman sees Rama in Kishkinda Kandam, he says, Bahavaha. Hanuman says, I see hands in front of me. Bahavaha in Sanskritam is Bahuvachanam, not Dvivachanam. Bahu, Bahavaha. So he says, I see more than 3 hands. So for which the commentator says, only to Hanuman, Rama was able to showcase his 2 other hands, which is 4 hands. Chaturbhuja Veshena Hanumat Vesho Abhavat. That is another one. Towards the Uttarakandam, he takes all the sentient matter to moksham. Anna characharangalai vaikundatteti says Kulashekar Alvar. So these are 3 instances where Rama doesn't say it, but does it. Yeah.
Anybody else has a question in the audience? Well, Bhai, can you take the mic over there? Please keep your questions short.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर. एज अ आमेचर रीडर जिसको स्क्रिप्चर्स के बारे में कुछ भी नहीं पता है.
आपका प्रश्न किसके लिए है?
पूरी पैनलिस्ट के लिए.
ठीक है, सारे बोलिए.
तो वो बेसिक कहाँ से स्टार्ट करे जिसको स्क्रिप्चर्स की रीडिंग स्टार्ट करनी है?
वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन, वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन. एवरीबॉडी गिव अ फास्ट आंसर.
I started my reading with Amar Chitra Katha and went to the interpretation by Dr. Rajagopalachari. So, and then believe in the magic of Veda Vyasa, he will take you.
मेरे हिसाब से जो राजगोपालचारी की रामायण और महाभारत है, दैट इज़ अ वेरी गुड स्टार्ट. और राजगोपालचारी आई थिंक वाल्मीकि के अतिरिक्त एक 12वीं शताब्दी के लेखक हुए हैं कम, तो वो कम रामायण से भी कुछ एपिसोड जो है लेते हैं. जैसे थोड़ा थोड़ा फ़र्क आता है कम रामायण और वाल्मीकि रामायण में, कि कम रामायण में क्या आता है कि जब रावण ने सीता का अपहरण किया था तो ही मेड दैट little patch of land rise up and he flew along with it. अगर मैं कुछ गलत तो नहीं बोल रहा?
Well, what do I say? I would say start with Mahabharata and Dravid, Ramayana and Dravid. No kidding. I think एक जो major mental block होता है लोगों को कि संस्कृत नहीं सीख सकते, we are too old now. और संस्कृत कैसे सीखेंगे? Because हमारे काम मतलब we can't do it anymore. I would say वो mental block निकालो. If you really want to read scriptures for what they are, have a working knowledge. You don't need to be a Vyakaran Shastri. But you will still need a working knowledge. Start from there. Of course, as they all said, there is Amar Chitra Katha, there are English translations, there is Hindi translation. The one other tip I would give, especially if you want to read Bhagavad Gita or one of this, ek to read it in your mother tongue if you can. Second, while reading, ensure it is accompanied by certain good lectures. Maybe listen to him. Dushyant Sridhar ji is one of the most learned on the panel here, yeah? Because kai baar kya hota hai na, the text itself will not make sense to us unless somebody puts it in the context. So rather than only wanting to read it, listen to some good scholars who are talking about it. And there are many out there. You will find ki aapka gelling kiske saath hota hai. So I would just say keep that in mind when you start your work.
Dushyant.
The name of the Astika who asked this question? Your name, sir?
My name is Kapesh.
Kapesh.
Yes.
Kapesh ji, if I can just reframe your question, where should I begin? That will be a better question because you had made it a very concrete question. Where should I begin reading? So that's where I'll concur with her. In Sanatana Dharma, reading is given lesser preference. Listening is what is very important. Shravanam, listening, because we are a civilization of Shruti and Smriti. We brought all those manuscripts much later. So my humble suggestion or request to you is, listen to hours together of lectures on Ramayanam. While I used to get trained under my Acharya, Bahudha Shrotavyaha, Bahubhya Shrotavyaha. You should listen to Ramayanam many times, rendered by many people, the discourses. The more you listen, then you get trained, and of course reading will come much later. I want their books to sell really well.
Yeah, please buy their books.
But please buy their books, but listening is very important.
Yeah, so we can take a couple of more questions. Maybe we can start over there and then come over here.
Hello, my question is with all the panelists, as we have talked about repackaging, and I have heard about a book called Ikigai. And a lot of my people talked about Ikigai and how good it is. But when I read about the book, in the first 3 or 4 chapters, it tells us the exact same thing that Bhagavad Gita told us. But a lot of people don't even know about us. So my question is, it's not, instead of telling people what happened in Mahabharata, why can't we tell them what values we can learn from Mahabharata and Ramayana?
Exactly, I totally agree with you. Actually, Ikigai, if we actually, dwell upon it, it again comes from our Purushartha, the Dharma, how you can contribute, how people can value you, Artha, what can pay you, Kama, what you like doing, what you're passionate about, right? All these things. So I am actually personally working on a goal setting mechanism based on a Purushartha. So yes, I agree with you that we have to, start imbibing our teaching or our whatever we teach the younger generation, it has to be based on our Sanatana frameworks like Purushartha, Panchakosha and all that. That's the work that we academics have to do. I have started my work, but also these are also doing exceptional work, so do please refer to their works also.
I would just add, there is no or, either or here. Yeah, we read everything because there's so much out there for us to learn. There is a lot of work happening also on what you said. Just bring out the values, yeah. There is an organization called Ritambhara, which works on using frameworks from Mahabharata for organizational learning and development and behavior. So a lot of work is happening. The thing is, we have to ensure we do our research well, we do our due diligence well, yeah. So abhi to hai. The effort is going to be ours to dig deeper, find out and get educated and propagate it more. We have everything out there.
Kojo, kojo. Kojo, kojo. Kojo, kojo.